Guess the gringo forgot his proper place again. Rafa Leon's words dripped arrogance as his cartel trucks idled under the Texas sun, dust curling around their tires. He saw Zeke as a proud black rancher standing too tall on land he was never meant to keep, a man too foolish to bow before real power. That night, Rafa's men returned with gas and rifles, setting the Monroe Ranch ablaze, flames climbing high into the sky. They thought the fire would erase him. Instead, it awakened something far stronger, and Zeke rode south with 15 Navy SEALs. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The midday Texas sun beat down mercilessly on Monroe Ranch, turning the air into a shimmering haze. Chickens pecked lazily at the ground, searching for insects in the parched earth. The peaceful scene shattered as 3 white pickup trucks roared up the dusty driveway, their engines growling like angry beasts. Each vehicle bristled with mounted weapons, sun glinting off the metal barrels. Ezekiel, Zeke Monroe, emerged from the barn's shadow, his navy t-shirt dark with sweat where it clung to his broad shoulders. He wiped his neck with a bandana, brown overalls dusty from morning work. His eyes narrowed as he counted 12 armed men climbing out of the trucks. Rafa Leon stepped out last, moving with the lazy confidence of a man used to getting his way. His gold chain caught the sunlight, heavy against his exposed chest where his shirt hung open. A cruel smile played across his face as he approached, boots crunching on the gravel. "Nice spread you got here, Monroe," Rafa called out, spreading his arms wide. "Be a shame if something happened to it." Hector, Rafa's lieutenant, flanked his boss with a hand resting on his holstered pistol. The other cartel members spread out in a loose semicircle, rifles held casually, but ready. "State your business and go," Zeke said, his voice steady and deep. His stance remained relaxed, but his eyes tracked every movement. Rafa pulled a folded document from his back pocket, waving it like a flag. "Just a simple piece of paper needs signing. Water rights transfer. Fair price, too." His smile widened. "Consider it a generous offer." "This land's not for sale," Zeke replied. "Neither are the water rights. My grandmother's will and deed are clear on that." "Your grandmother?" Rafa laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. "Dead women don't need water, friend." Zeke's jaw tightened. "My answer's no." Rafa's smile vanished. In 2 quick steps, he pressed the cold barrel of a chrome pistol against Zeke's cheek. The metal burned hot from the sun. "Maybe you didn't hear me right." Zeke didn't flinch. His dark eyes locked onto Rafa's, unflinching, unafraid. The tension crackled between them like static before a storm. A police SUV pulled up, lights off, sirens silent. Sheriff Dalton Briggs stepped out, adjusting his hat against the glare. His boots kicked up dust as he approached, badge gleaming. "Now what's all this about?" Briggs drawled, playing at confusion. His hand rested casually on his service weapon. "Sheriff?" Zeke acknowledged, without looking away from Rafa. "These men are trespassing." Briggs clicked his tongue. "Looks to me like a simple business discussion." He moved closer, positioned slightly toward Rafa's group. "Mr. Leon here has some legitimate interests in local water rights. Might be smart to hear him out." "Legitimate?" Zeke's voice carried a dangerous edge. "Since when does legitimate business come with armed men and threats?" "Times are tough," Briggs said smoothly. "For your own good, you might want to cooperate. Consider your position here." The standoff stretched taut as a wire. Then one of Rafa's men, grinning mean, deliberately kicked Zeke's old cattle dog sleeping in the shade. The dog yelped, scrambling away. Something snapped in Zeke's eyes. His first punch caught the dog kicker square in the throat. The man dropped, gasping. Chaos erupted in the yard. Two cartel soldiers rushed Zeke from opposite sides. He grabbed a shovel leaning against the barn, spinning it like a staff. The wooden handle connected with one attacker's wrist with a sharp crack. The man screamed, his gun dropping to the dirt. Zeke's military training showed in every movement, efficient, precise, deadly. He ducked under a wild swing and drove his forehead into another attacker's nose, cartilage crunching. Blood sprayed. Hector charged in with a knife, but Zeke was ready. He unwrapped the heavy chain from his waist in one fluid motion, whipping it out to entangle Hector's weapon hand. A sharp yank disarmed him. The air filled with curses in English and Spanish, boots scuffling in the dust. Zeke moved like water, each strike calculated and brutal. Another enforcer fell, clutching his ribs. Someone's teeth scattered in the dirt. The staccato burst of machine gun fire split the air. Everyone froze as bullets tore into the sky. Silence crashed down. Zeke stood in the center of the chaos, chest heaving. Blood trickled from a split lip, but his eyes burned with controlled fury. Around him lay groaning cartel soldiers, some clutching broken bones, others simply trying to crawl away. Sheriff Briggs moved in with handcuffs out, but instead of approaching Rafa or his men, he grabbed Zeke's wrists. "You're under arrest for assault and disturbing the peace." Rafa dabbed at his bleeding lip with a silk handkerchief, his smirk returning as he watched Briggs secure the cuffs. The click of metal seemed to echo across the suddenly quiet ranch yard. Through the cruiser's dirty window, Zeke watched his ranch grow smaller in the distance. His hands throbbed where the skin had split during the fight, blood drying dark between his fingers. The cuffs bit into his wrists each time the car hit a bump in the road. Sheriff Briggs adjusted his rear-view mirror, catching Zeke's eye. "You just had to make things difficult, didn't you?" He shook his head. "Could have been a peaceful afternoon." Zeke said nothing, his jaw tight. The memory of his dog's yelp burned in his mind. At the station, they led him past holding cells filled with the usual weekend drunks and troublemakers. A few nodded in recognition. Zeke had treated some of their injuries during his time as an army medic. The deputies pushed him into an interrogation room where Briggs was waiting, sleeves rolled up, hat on the table. "Let's talk about your choices today," Briggs began, leaning back in his chair. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across his face. "Violence isn't the answer, son. Not in my county. Those men came armed to my property," Zeke stated flatly. "They threatened me. Mr. Leon came to discuss a business proposition." Briggs's voice dripped with false concern. "You escalated. Could have gotten real ugly." Through the room's window, Zeke spotted Rafa's men being quietly escorted out the back door. No cuffs, no charges, just handshakes and nods from deputies. His hands clenched involuntarily, making fresh blood well up from his split knuckles. "You'll spend the night cooling off," Briggs announced, standing. "Maybe tomorrow you'll be more reasonable." The holding cell was cold and smelled of bleach. Zeke sat on the metal bench, back straight, eyes closed. He focused on his breathing like he'd learned in the service. Slow, controlled, pushing down the anger that wanted to explode out of him. Morning brought Isabel Cruz, her heels clicking purposefully down the corridor. She wore a crisp black blazer despite the early hour, her tablet tucked under one arm. Zeke had known her since she started her legal aid clinic 3 years ago, helping local farmers fight predatory land deals. "You look terrible," she said as the cell door opened. "Let's get you out of here." At her car, she handed him a coffee and antiseptic wipes for his hands. "This isn't random, Zeke. Clay Harlow's behind it." "The developer?" Zeke dabbed at his knuckles, wincing. Isabel nodded, pulling out her tablet. "Silver Dominion LLC, his company, filed emergency environmental remediation papers yesterday. They're claiming your land is contaminated and needs immediate seizure." "That's impossible." We just had the soil tested for the organic certification. Facts don't matter to them. She showed him documents, pointing out highlighted sections. Harlow's got friends in the county offices. They'll push this through fast unless we fight back. Zeke studied the papers, his expression darkening. And Rafa? That's where it gets interesting. Isabel swiped to another screen. Someone's been busy in the property databases. Pre-filed deeds under Leon's name, backdated permits. They're building a paper trail, making it look like he has prior claim, Zeke said. Exactly. Briggs is running interference while they set up the legal trap. She touched his arm. We need to be careful. These people don't play fair. After signing release papers, Zeke borrowed Isabel's phone to call his neighbor about feeding the animals. His own phone was still in evidence, along with his wallet and keys. The station had to return them, but they were taking their time. By late afternoon, Zeke finally headed home in his dusty truck. The sun hung low and orange on the horizon, painting everything in burnt copper tones. His hands ached on the steering wheel. Isabel had wrapped them properly, but the bruising went deep. A mile from his ranch, movement caught his eye. 3 white pickup trucks were parked on a rise overlooking his land. Even at this distance, he could make out the silhouettes of men standing beside them, distorted by the heat waves rising from the ground. Watching. Waiting. Zeke's jaw clenched as he drove past. He could feel their eyes on him, their presence a clear message. This wasn't over. The trucks remained in his rearview mirror until he turned onto his driveway, dark shapes against the dying light. His dog limped out to greet him, favoring the leg that had been kicked. Zeke knelt in the dust, running gentle hands over the animal, checking for serious damage. Finding only bruising, he scratched behind the dog's ears. "We're okay, old friend," he murmured. "We're okay." But as he straightened up, his gaze was drawn to those distant watchers on the hill. The orange sky seemed to burn behind them, and the evening wind carried dust that tasted like trouble coming. The kitchen was quiet, except for the soft clicking of dog claws on linoleum. Zeke picked at his dinner. Leftover stew warmed up in the microwave. His bandaged hands made the spoon awkward. His dog lay at his feet, still favoring that kicked leg. From his seat, he could see Mama Ruth's photo on the windowsill. She stood proud in her Sunday best, one hand on her hip, the other holding up the original ranch deed like a victory flag. The same determination that had gotten her through segregation and civil rights marches showed in every line of her face. "What would you do, Mama?" he whispered. The crickets outside chirped their evening song, a familiar rhythm that usually brought peace. But tonight, something felt wrong. Zeke put down his spoon, listening hard. There, beneath the crickets, a low rumble of engines, and something else, diesel fumes riding the breeze through his open window. His dog's head came up, ears alert. Then they both heard it. Laughter, distant but clear. Male voices speaking Spanish, getting closer. The first orange glow reflected off his kitchen window before he saw the actual flames. The hay barn erupted like a match head, gasoline turning dry feed into an inferno. The night exploded into shades of red and gold as fire roared up the wooden walls. "No!" Zeke bolted from his chair, nearly tripping over his dog. He grabbed his phone and ran outside, the heat hitting him like a wall. More flames burst to life. They'd doused the stables, too. Above the fire's roar, he heard screaming. Mr. Palomo, his elderly neighbor, who sometimes slept in the stable loft while working late. Zeke sprinted toward the burning building. Smoke stung his eyes as he shouldered through the door. "Mr. Palomo, where are you?" "Aquí! Help!" The voice came from above, weak and choked with smoke. The stairs were already catching fire, but Zeke took them 2 at a time. He found Mr. Palomo collapsed near his cot, coughing violently. The old man's eyes were red and streaming. "I've got you," Zeke said, pulling him up. "Keep your head down." The horses below were shrieking, kicking their stalls in panic. Zeke half-carried Mr. Palomo down the burning steps, feeling wood crack beneath their feet. They stumbled out into the yard just as part of the roof collapsed behind them. Zeke ran back to free the horses, but the heat was too intense. The animals' terrified cries cut through him like knives. He had to back away, helpless, as the flames consumed everything. Through the wall of fire, he spotted figures standing just beyond his property line. The orange light caught on rifle barrels and white teeth as Rafa's men watched, laughing and passing bottles between them. They'd come to enjoy the show. Zeke grabbed his phone, dialed 911. The dispatcher assured him deputies were on their way. But minutes passed, then half an hour. No sirens came. When he called again, they claimed the units were having trouble finding the address. Mr. Palomo sat in the dirt, oxygen mask from Zeke's old medical kit strapped to his face. Zeke tried to save what he could, but the fire was too widespread, too hot. It jumped from building to building, barn to stables to storage sheds. Years of careful maintenance and family history disappeared in minutes. The smoke was suffocating. Zeke's lungs burned as he made one last desperate run toward the house. He managed to grab a few crucial items: his grandmother's journal, some photos, important papers, before the flames reached the back porch. He collapsed in the yard, coughing so hard he retched. The journal in his hands was already scorched around the edges, its leather cover hot to the touch. Through streaming eyes, he watched his family's legacy turn to ash. The cartel men's laughter echoed in his ears, mixing with the crackle of burning wood and the last frightened whinnies of dying horses. His dog pressed against his leg, whimpering. Hours passed. The fire burned itself out as false dawn began to pale the eastern sky. Zeke hadn't moved, kneeling in the dirt where he'd fallen. Smoke rose in thin gray ribbons from the blackened ruins of the Monroe Ranch. The air smelled of char and gasoline and loss. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out with shaking hands, staring at the screen. A number he hadn't called in years showed up. Saint Seal. His finger hovered over the green answer button. The sun crept over the horizon, painting the destruction in harsh morning light. Everything his grandmother had built, everything she'd fought for, lay in ruins around him. Her journal's damaged pages crumbled at his touch. Zeke looked at the phone again, remembering. Saint had saved his life twice in Afghanistan. They'd made a pact back then. If either one ever truly needed help, one call was all it would take. He'd never used that promise, had hoped he never would. The phone kept vibrating. Somehow, Saint knew. He always knew. Zeke pressed the button and raised the phone to his ear. The desert sun hammered the empty parking lot of Rosa's Diner, a faded building squatting beside the highway outside El Paso. Heat waves danced off abandoned cars, their paint peeling in the merciless Texas weather. Inside, ceiling fans spun lazily over cracked vinyl booths and chrome-edged tables. Zeke sat in the furthest corner, his back to the wall, watching the door. His grandmother's burned journal lay on the table before him like a wound. The waitress had stopped trying to refill his coffee an hour ago, leaving him alone with his thoughts and the quiet hum of the refrigerator. The bell above the door chimed. A man entered, tall, Latino, mid-40s, wearing a plain black t-shirt and jeans. Silver threaded through his short-cropped hair, and old scars marked his forearms. His eyes swept the diner with practiced precision before settling on Zeke. Javier Saint Santoro slid into the booth without a word. For a long moment, the two men just looked at each other, years of shared combat history hanging in the air between them. "You look like hell," Saint finally said, his voice gravelly but warm. "Feel worse." Zeke's hands were still bandaged from the fight and the fire. The waitress approached, but Saint waved her off with a gentle smile. He pointed to Zeke's scorched journal. "Tell me." Zeke spoke quietly, laying out the whole story. Rafa's threats, Briggs's corruption, Harlow's land grab, and finally, the burning of his ranch. He described the horses' screams, Mr. Palomo's near death, and the laughter of the men who'd watched it burn. His voice stayed steady, but his hands clenched into fists on the table. Saint listened without interruption, his face growing harder with each detail. When Zeke finished, silence filled the booth. Outside, a truck rumbled past on the highway. 15, owe you, Saint said simply. Zeke looked up sharply. That was years ago. Afghanistan. I was just doing my job as a medic. You pulled 7 of us out of that ambush. Carried Doc for 3 miles with a bullet in your own leg. Saint leaned forward. We don't forget debts like that. He pulled out his phone, sent a single text. Within minutes, responses started flooding in. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of precise activity. They moved to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. One by one, the others arrived. Men and women Zeke had served with, each bringing specialized skills honed by years of special operations. Rook came first, the team's master breacher, his truck loaded with equipment that officially didn't exist. Then Diesel, their vehicle specialist, followed by Moose, whose massive frame belied his expertise in stealth infiltration. Doc arrived with medical supplies and a bear hug for Zeke, their shared background as combat medics creating an instant connection. Vega, their drone specialist, brought a case of custom surveillance equipment, her quick wit already planning aerial reconnaissance patterns. Fable, the communications expert, set up a mobile command center, establishing encrypted channels and digital security. Others filtered in throughout the day. Faces Zeke remembered from his deployment, all answering Saint's call without hesitation. They gathered around a makeshift planning table, studying satellite maps and property records. Zeke laid out everything Isabel had uncovered about Harlow's shell companies and Briggs's corruption. Saint marked key locations, Rafa's compounds, money laundering fronts, smuggling routes. This isn't just about revenge, Zeke told them. It's about justice, about showing that you can't just burn out whoever you want because they won't be bought. The team nodded. They understood. This wasn't a military operation, but a reckoning, a chance to use their skills for something pure. As night fell, they loaded up 3 unmarked vehicles with gear. Weapons were checked, communications tested, medical supplies distributed. Every movement was efficient, muscle memory from countless missions together. They crossed the Rio Grande under cover of darkness, using old ranch roads and dry creek beds to avoid official crossings. The border stretched out before them, a line drawn in sand and politics that meant nothing to the truth they carried. Zeke sat in the lead vehicle, Saint driving beside him. The scorched journal rested in his lap, its damaged pages containing his grandmother's story, her fight against segregation, her belief in standing up to bullies, her dream of land that would stay in the family forever. The convoy wound through the desert, headlights off, using night vision to navigate. Dust clouded behind them, then settled in their wake. The moon cast everything in silver shadows. They burned your home, Saint said quietly, eyes on the road ahead. Let's burn their empire. The words hung in the air as they drove deeper into cartel territory. 15 skilled operators moving like ghosts through the night, carrying justice in their hands. The desert stretched endless around them, promising both cover and witness to what would come. Morning painted the border village in shades of amber and dust. The abandoned citrus-packing warehouse stood like a sentinel at the edge of town, its concrete walls weathered by decades of sun and neglect. Inside, the vast space smelled of old fruit and rust, metal shelving creating shadowy canyons perfect for concealment. Vega's drone hummed to life in the pre-dawn light, rising above the warehouse like a mechanical dragonfly. She sat cross-legged on a stack of empty crates, her tablet showing thermal images of the surrounding area. Saint and Moose flanked her, studying the feed. "Rafa's compound," Vega whispered, pointing to a sprawling estate nestled in the Sierra foothills. 3 rings of security. Guard towers here, here, and here. At least 20 armed men on rotation. The drone's camera zoomed in, revealing details of the Cartel boss's fortress. High walls topped with razor wire encircled Mediterranean-style buildings. Luxury cars gleamed in the morning sun. Armed men patrolled with military precision, their weapons visible even from this height. "Briggs visits every 2 weeks," Fable added from his command center, surrounded by monitors showing intercepted communications. "Always on Thursdays. Harlow's shell companies wire money the next day." His fingers flew over keyboards, tracking digital breadcrumbs through encrypted channels. Zeke stood at a makeshift planning table, studying topographical maps spread across its surface. His hands traced possible approach routes, muscle memory from his military days flooding back. Doc had changed his bandages that morning, the burns and cuts from the ranch fire still raw. "Found their supply lines," Rook announced, marking routes on the map with a red marker. "They're moving product north through these valleys. Money comes back south through wire transfers, and these 3 front businesses." In the warehouse's loading bay, Diesel had set up a training area. Old fruit crates served as obstacles, and hanging chains simulated combat scenarios. He beckoned to Zeke. "Time to shake off the rust, farmer," Diesel said with a grin, raising his fists in a fighting stance. Zeke stripped off his shirt, revealing old scars from his military days. They circled each other on the concrete floor, feet moving in practiced patterns. Diesel struck first, a quick combination that Zeke blocked, muscle memory returning like an old friend. They sparred for hours, sweat mixing with dust. Diesel taught him new techniques, helping him adapt his combat medic training to more aggressive applications. The warehouse echoed with the sound of impacts and controlled breathing. "Looking better," Saint commented, watching from the sidelines. "But we need to move soon. Got word of a cartel convoy tonight." As dusk approached, they gathered their gear. Silenced rifles were checked and rechecked. Night vision goggles were adjusted. Comms were tested one final time. They set up the ambush on a lonely stretch of road cutting through scrubland. Rook and Moose planted flashbangs in the ditches. Vega's drone provided overwatch, its thermal camera tracking heat signatures approaching from the south. 3 vehicles, her voice crackled in their earpieces. 2 escort trucks, 1 van in the middle, 11 heat signatures. Zeke lay prone behind a rocky outcrop, his rifle steady. The desert night was cold now, stars sharp overhead. He controlled his breathing, just like Doc had taught him years ago in Afghanistan. The convoy's headlights appeared first, cutting through the darkness. They waited until the vehicles entered the kill zone. "Execute," Saint whispered. Flashbangs erupted in strobing chaos. The vehicles swerved, brakes squealing. Before the cartel men could respond, silenced rifles cracked from multiple positions. The precision was absolute. No wasted shots, no collateral damage. When it was over, they moved quickly. Diesel hot-wired the van, while others secured weapons and phones from the dead. Rook planted charges to destroy the vehicles, erasing evidence of their presence. Zeke stood over one of the bodies, a young man with cartel tattoos crawling up his neck. The same symbols he'd seen on the men who burned his ranch. Blood darkened the dust beneath him. "That's one less ghost haunting my land," Zeke said quietly, his voice carrying in the desert stillness. Back at the warehouse, Fable worked through the seized phones, Encrypted messages revealed shipment schedules, payment records, and conversations between Rafa, Briggs, and Harlow. The corruption network spread out before them like a spider's web. "Look at this," Fable called out, pointing to his screen. "Briggs is meeting Rafa tomorrow night. Something about finalizing the Monroe situation." The team gathered around the planning table as night settled over the village. Maps were updated with new intelligence. Weapons were cleaned and prepared. The warehouse hummed with purposeful activity as they prepared for their next move. Outside, an owl called in the darkness. Inside, 15 operators moved like shadows through the gloom, each carrying a piece of Zeke's justice. The night air grew cool, seeping through the warehouse's broken windows, carrying with it the promise of what was to come. San Roque's streets baked under the afternoon sun. The buildings faded like old photographs. Laundry hung limp between balconies, and local vendors packed up early when the white trucks rolled through. Music drifted from the cantina. Ranchera songs mixing with the sound of glass clinking and muted conversations. The team split into smaller groups, blending in with practiced ease. Zeke and Saint entered the cantina first, taking seats at the scarred wooden bar. The place smelled of stale beer and cigarettes. A ceiling fan spun lazily overhead, doing little to move the heavy air. The waitress, young with tired eyes, brought them beers without meeting their gaze. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down the bottles. At a corner table, 3 of Rafa's lieutenants lounged like kings, their guns visible under loose shirts. Hector sat at their center, his tattooed arms spread across the back of his chair. "Hey, Princesa!" Hector called out, his voice cutting through the music. "More tequila. And try not to spill it this time, stupid girl." The waitress hurried to comply, but her shaking hands betrayed her fear. As she approached their table, one of the men stuck out his foot. She stumbled, the tray crashing to the floor. Tequila and broken glass scattered across worn floorboards. "Clumsy bitch," Hector laughed, standing up. He grabbed her arm roughly. "That's coming out of your pay." "Maybe we should take it another way." The other patrons looked away, shoulders hunched. This was how things worked in San Roque. You stayed quiet. You survived. But Zeke was already moving, his bar stool scraping back. "Let her go," he said, his voice calm, but carrying enough authority to freeze the room. Hector's head snapped around, recognition and rage flashing across his face. "The cowboy!" he spat. "Long way from your burned-out ranch, pendejo." "Last warning," Zeke replied. "Take your hands off her." The lieutenant shoved the waitress aside and reached for his pistol. He never made it. Zeke's first punch caught him in the throat, crushing his windpipe. As Hector gagged, his men surged up from the table. The bar erupted into controlled violence. Saint took down 2 gunmen with brutal efficiency, disarming one and using him as a shield against the other. Rook and Diesel appeared from their positions by the door, moving with liquid speed. A cartel soldier swung a bottle at Zeke's head. He ducked, caught the man's wrist, and drove his elbow into the attacker's face. Bone crunched. Another came at him with a knife, but Zeke trapped the blade between his palms and twisted, snapping the man's fingers. Hector recovered enough to draw his gun, but Zeke was ready. He grabbed the lieutenant's wrist, redirecting the barrel toward the ceiling as it fired. The shot deafened the room. Zeke head-butted Hector, then seized his shirt and hurled him through a nearby table. Wood splintered. Hector lay groaning in the wreckage. 20 seconds. That's all it took. 6 of Rafa's men lay broken or unconscious. No civilian casualties, no collateral damage, just precision and purpose. Vega's mini-drone hovered near the ceiling, recording everything. The footage would be online within the hour, edited to protect their operational security while showing Zeke's stand against tyranny. Zeke knelt beside the fallen waitress, helping her up with gentle hands. He pressed a thick roll of dollars into her palm, money taken from the cartel's own couriers. "For the damage," he said softly, "and for your courage in serving them every day." She stared at him with wide eyes, then whispered, "Gracias, señor." Around the bar, other patrons began to straighten, looking at the fallen cartel men with dawning hope. Saint tossed a phone to Hector, who was still dazed on the floor. "Call your boss. Tell him what happened here. Tell him the black cowboy says hello." They left the cantina as sirens wailed in the distance. Local police who would arrive conveniently late, as usual. The team melted away through back alleys and predetermined routes, regrouping at their warehouse base. Fable's computers were already pushing the footage through secure channels. Within hours, it spread across social media like wildfire. The black ranchers standing up to cartel thugs. Justice delivered in 20 seconds of righteous violence. Miles north, in her legal aid office, Isabel watched the footage on multiple screens. She'd been building cases against Briggs and Harlow for weeks, but this was different. This was visual proof of the cartel's iron grip on border towns, and proof that it could be broken. She began making calls to journalists she trusted, people who wouldn't bury the story. "I've got documentation of corruption linking a Texas sheriff to cartel violence," she said. "And now I have footage showing how deep it goes." The story gained traction. Local news picked it up first, then national outlets. Comments sections filled with support for the mysterious black cowboy defending the powerless. Even those who usually backed Briggs's tough-on-crime stance couldn't justify the harassment caught on camera. In his hillside compound, Rafa Leon watched the viral clip for the 10th time. Ice clinked in his glass as his hand shook with rage. The screen showed Zeke Monroe, the man who should have been broken by fire and fear, standing tall in Rafa's territory, breaking his men like twigs. The glass shattered against the wall. Tequila dripped down expensive wallpaper as Rafa turned to his remaining lieutenants. "Find the black cowboy," he snarled, "and bury him." The order echoed through the room, but for the first time, his men looked uncertain. The video had shown them something new, their own vulnerability. And in San Roque, people were beginning to whisper about the rancher who didn't break. Darkness settled over San Roque like a heavy blanket. Inside the abandoned citrus warehouse, lantern light cast long shadows across makeshift operations tables. The air smelled of dust and old fruit, mixed with gun oil and coffee. Zeke leaned over detailed satellite maps spread across wooden crates, his fingers tracing supply routes through the mountains. Saint stood beside him, his weathered face serious in the yellow light. Around them, the other SEALs worked with quiet efficiency, cleaning weapons, checking gear, monitoring communications. "Rafa's main compound is here," Saint said, tapping a location marked in red. "But his money moves through these 3 towns." His finger traced a triangle across the map. Each transfer point is heavily guarded. Diesel, their demolitions expert, pointed to a narrow mountain pass. "We could set up here, force their convoy to bottleneck." In the corner of the warehouse, partially hidden behind stacked equipment, Marcus Fable Lang hunched over his laptop. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, face illuminated by the blue screen glow. To anyone watching, he appeared to be doing his job, monitoring communications, maintaining their secure network. But Fable was typing a different kind of message. Subject: Monroe Operation Update to Handler 47. Status: Critical target expanding influence in border region. Local support growing after Cantina incident. Team planning aggressive moves against cartel infrastructure. Request immediate guidance on containment protocols. He encrypted the message using a buried protocol, separate from the team's normal channels. His handler's response came minutes later. Priority: Protect Asset Leon. DOJ DAA operations require his continued cooperation. Redirect Monroe team. Use extreme measures if necessary. Fable's hands shook slightly as he deleted the exchange. The weight of his secret mission pressed down on him like a physical thing. He believed in law and order, in the system. But watching Zeke work, seeing the justice he brought to forgotten places, made everything feel less certain. "Fable," Saint called out. "What's our comm situation for tomorrow?" "All secure," he replied, keeping his voice steady. "I've got repeaters set up through the hills. We'll maintain contact, even if they try to jam us." But even as he spoke, he was already coding a subtle backdoor into their communications. A way to scramble their signals at the crucial moment, make it look like cartel interference. The warehouse's metal walls creaked in the night wind. Rook and Vega returned from perimeter check, reporting all clear. The team settled into their planning rhythm, marking targets, calculating angles, preparing for the next day's operation. Zeke's phone buzzed. Isabel's name lit up the screen. "Got something," she said, without preamble when he answered. "Been digging through Harlow's shell companies. Found a pattern of payments to DEA front operations." Zeke put the phone on speaker, letting the team hear. "What kind of payments?" "Consulting fees, property purchases, all through firms that trace back to known DEA shells. But here's the weird part. The timing matches perfectly with Rafa's expansion into new territories. Every time he takes new ground, Harlow's companies make payments." Saint's expression darkened. "They're working together, DEA, Cartel, and your corrupt developer." "Bigger than we thought," Isabel continued. "This isn't just about your ranch, Zeke. They're building something. Using Rafa's violence to clear the way, then swooping in with legitimate development." Fable listened intently, his stomach churning. He knew the full scope. How the DEA used Rafa to control the border drug trade, keeping smaller cartels out while feeding intelligence up the chain. It was ugly, but it was policy. And now Zeke's crusade threatened to expose everything. While the team focused on Isabel's call, Fable quietly accessed a separate system. He began uploading doctored shipping manifests, purchase orders for restricted weapons, all carefully crafted to implicate Zeke's operation. Just enough evidence to justify a federal crackdown if needed. "We hit their money tomorrow," Zeke declared after ending the call. "Cut off Rafa's cash flow, force them to show their hand." The team nodded in agreement, but Fable saw the plan unraveling before it began. His manipulated data was already spreading through law enforcement networks, painting Zeke as an arms dealer. A threat worse than the cartel he fought. Zeke paused in his planning, a slight frown crossing his face. Something felt off, a soldier's instinct warning him of unseen danger. He studied the warehouse shadows, the faces of his trusted team, searching for what his gut was trying to tell him. Outside, diesel engines rumbled in the distance. Cartel trucks moving north under cover of darkness, carrying money, drugs, and secrets that went all the way to Washington. The sound carried on the dry wind, mixing with the creak of old warehouse beams and the soft clicks of weapons being checked one last time. Fable closed his laptop, hiding his screen as Zeke walked past. They exchanged nods, a gesture of trust that felt like acid in Fable's throat. Tomorrow's mission loomed before them, heavy with the weight of betrayal not yet revealed. Dawn painted the sky in shades of purple and orange, the sun not yet visible over the eastern hills. In a dry riverbed carved deep into the earth, Zeke lay prone behind a cluster of sun-bleached rocks. His rifle scope swept the dirt road above, waiting. Beside him, Saint checked his watch. 5 minutes, he whispered. The team was spread out along both sides of the riverbed, hidden in natural shooting positions. Diesel and Rook on the high ground with 50 cal rifles. Vega and Doc in the brush below with med kits and breaching charges. the rest positioned strategically, creating a perfect kill box. Fable's voice crackled in their earpieces. Convoy approaching from the south. 4 vehicles. 2 lead trucks. Money in the middle van. Rear security. The sound of engines grew louder. Dust clouds appeared on the horizon. Zeke steadied his breathing, feeling the familiar calm of combat settle over him. The morning air was cool against his skin, carrying the scent of creosote and gunpowder. The convoy rounded the bend. White pickup trucks bristling with armed men, a reinforced van in the middle, all moving fast but confident. They had no reason to expect trouble here, deep in their territory. "Wait for it," Saint murmured. The vehicles entered the kill zone. Diesel squeezed his trigger. The first shot thundered across the riverbed, punching through the lead truck's engine block in a spray of oil and steam. The truck swerved, blocking the road. "Execute!" Saint commanded. The riverbed erupted. Coordinated rifle fire ripped into the convoy from multiple angles. Tires exploded. Windshields shattered. Cartel gunmen dove for cover, returning fire blindly. Zeke rolled to his right as bullets kicked up dirt around him. He spotted 3 men taking position behind their disabled truck. In one smooth motion, he dropped to his stomach, aimed beneath the vehicle's chassis, and squeezed off 3 precise shots. The men fell, clutching their legs. "Moving!" he called out, sprinting to the overturned truck. Bullets whined past his head. He slid behind the truck bed, feeling the impact of rounds hitting the other side. Through the gun smoke, he saw the money van's driver trying to reverse. Zeke fired through the floorboard, the hollow points punching up through the metal. The driver screamed, foot jerking off the gas. "Van is stopped," Rook called out. "West side clear." Saint's voice came sharp and clean. "Breach the van! Breach now!" Doc and Vega sprinted forward, moving like shadows. They placed shaped charges on the van's rear doors. "Fire in the hole!" The explosion was contained but powerful. The doors flew off their hinges. Inside, stacks of cash filled reinforced cases. Hard drives and ledgers were scattered across the floor. No guards. They'd all been taken out in the initial assault. Zeke moved up to the van, covering the angles while Vega and Doc secured the contents. The entire firefight had lasted less than 2 minutes. "Area secure," Saint announced. "Diesel, get those cameras ready." They dragged the cases into the morning light. The money was bundled in neat stacks: dollars, pesos, euros. Millions in cash. The hard drives would be even more valuable, containing the evidence they needed. Zeke pulled out his phone, hands steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through him. He started the live stream, pointing the camera at the captured haul. "Look at this," he said, his voice clear and strong. "This is cartel money. Blood money. Every stack bought silence. Every bundle paid for protection. This cash was headed to Sheriff Briggs, to Clay Harlow, to everyone who helps them steal and kill." He picked up a ledger, flipping through pages of transactions. "Here's the price list for corruption. 20,000 to ignore a murder. 50,000 to burn down a ranch. 100,000 to make evidence disappear." The viewer count climbed rapidly. Comments flooded in. People were sharing the stream, tagging news outlets. "They thought they could hide in the dark," Zeke continued. "Thought money would keep everyone quiet. But here's the truth in the sunlight." Saint gathered the hard drives while the team secured their prisoners, all wounded but none fatally. They wouldn't die today, but they would talk. Diesel poured accelerant over the empty vehicles. "Ready when you are." Zeke ended the stream but kept recording as they set the convoy ablaze. Black smoke rose into the morning sky, a signal visible for miles. The team moved quickly, loading their evidence into their own vehicles. The wounded cartel members were zip-tied and left in the shade with water. Someone would come for them eventually. As they prepared to move out, Saint clasped Zeke's shoulder. You just made yourself the most hunted man in Texas." The sun finally crested the eastern hills, flooding the riverbed with golden light. The burning vehicles cast long shadows across the ground, smoke twisting up into the cloudless sky like black serpents. The sun hung low over San Roque, painting the adobe walls in deep orange. Market vendors packed their stalls, while children kicked a soccer ball in the dusty square. The evening air carried whispers of El Vaquero Negro, the black cowboy who had humiliated the cartel. Zeke sat with Saint at an outdoor cafe, both wearing plain clothes to blend in. They watched mothers hurrying their children home, old men playing dominoes, and the subtle signs of a town living under fear. "Words spreading fast," Saint said, sipping his coffee. "Your riverbed video hit 500,000 views." "Look at their faces," Zeke replied quietly. "They want to believe someone's finally standing up, but they're scared." A group of teenagers passed by, sneaking glances at Zeke. One boy raised his fist slightly, a subtle gesture of support. Zeke nodded back. The peace shattered with the roar of engines. 3 black SUVs screeched into the square, cartel soldiers leaping out with red gas cans and weapons. People scattered as the men charged toward the community center where children had been having art classes moments before. "Contact!" Saint barked into his radio. "All teams, converge on the square." The first Molotov cocktail arced through the air, smashing through a window. Flames erupted inside the building. Screams filled the evening as more firebombs followed. Zeke sprinted toward the chaos, Saint covering him. Through his earpiece, he heard the team responding, moving into position around the square. A young teacher stumbled out of the burning building, coughing, leading 3 terrified children. Zeke grabbed them, pushing them toward safety, as Doc appeared to provide medical aid. "Second floor!" someone shouted. More children were trapped upstairs. Diesel and Rook engaged the cartel soldiers with precise shots, driving them back from the building. The gunmen retreated behind their vehicles, returning fire wildly. Zeke spotted one arsonist breaking from the group, trying to circle around with another firebomb. He charged after him, tackling the man through a ground-floor window in an explosion of glass and flames. They hit the floor hard, rolling. The gas can clattered away. The arsonist, barely more than a teenager, swung a knife. Zeke blocked, twisted, and slammed the boy's wrist against the floor until the blade fell. "Move, and you die," Zeke growled, pinning him down. Outside, the firefight intensified. The SEALs had the cartel men surrounded. Vega and Moose were already inside, evacuating the upper floor. Zeke dragged his captive out through the broken window, keeping him in a tight hold. The boy struggled until Zeke tightened his grip. "Start talking," Zeke demanded. "Who ordered this?" The arsonist spat blood. "Go to hell." Saint appeared with a phone, already streaming live. "Better answer him, kid. Whole world's watching now." Zeke forced the boy to his knees. "Tell them who sent you to burn down a building full of children. Rafa will kill me." "I'll kill you faster," Zeke said, his voice ice-cold. "Start with Sheriff Briggs. Tell them how he lets you operate." The crowd was growing, phones raised, recording everything. The boy's eyes darted between the cameras and the guns. Finally, he broke. Briggs takes money to look the other way," he stammered. $50,000 a month. He gives us patrol schedules, warns us about raids." "And today? Who ordered this attack?" "Rafa. He said to send a message. Show everyone what happens to towns that help Zeke Monroe." The crowd muttered angrily. More people were streaming into the square, watching the confession. "And the ranch burning?" Zeke pressed. "Tell them about that, too." Briggs approved it, said it would look like an accident, said no deputies would respond. Sirens wailed in the distance. Too late, as usual. The cartel gunmen had fled, leaving their wounded behind. The fire department finally arrived to battle the flames. Zeke handed the arsonist to Diesel for securing. He turned to address the crowd directly, his voice carrying across the square. "They think fear will keep you quiet," he said. "They burn your buildings, threaten your children, tell you nothing will change. But look around. They're the ones running now." Cheers erupted. People pressed forward, reaching out to touch Zeke's shoulder, thanking him through tears. An old woman brought water for the firefighters. Others helped tend to the shocked children. The community was coming alive, fear giving way to anger and resolve. Saint ended the live stream as local police arrived. They looked uncertain, caught between protocol and the clear mood of the crowd. One young officer actually saluted Zeke before pretending to be busy with crowd control. "Get the wounded clear," Zeke ordered his team, "and make copies of every video. The world needs to see this." The sun had set completely now. The community center still smoldered, but volunteers were already planning repairs. Children drew chalk messages of defiance on the square's pavement. Hope, fragile but real, bloomed in the gathering dark. High above the town, in his hillside villa, Rafa watched the scene unfold on multiple screens. A muscle twitched in his jaw as he saw his men's confessions going viral. He gripped his whiskey glass so tight it cracked. "He wants to play hero," he said coldly. "Let's make him the villain." Dawn crept over the warehouse, painting shadows across stacked crates and tactical gear. Zeke hunched over a folding table covered in documents, his eyes tired but focused. Isabel's laptop screen cast a blue glow on their faces as they sorted through evidence. "Look at these transfer records," Isabel said, pointing to her screen. "Harlow's shell companies moving millions through offshore accounts, all tied to Briggs's personal foundation." "Can we prove it's cartel money?" Zeke asked, rubbing his temples. "Better." Isabel pulled up another document. "These geological surveys show lithium deposits under your ranch, dated 3 months before the first threats started." Their planning session was interrupted by Fable, who entered carrying his communications gear. His movements seemed twitchy, nervous. "Signal's patchy this morning," he reported, avoiding eye contact. "Might need to move the antenna." While they talked, Fable's fingers moved across his second phone, hidden in his pocket. He'd spent the night editing footage from their operations, splicing in scenes of staged violence. His message to his handler was brief: "Package ready for delivery." Saint joined them, laying out tactical maps. "Drone feed shows increased activity at Rafa's compound. They're moving something big." Before they could discuss further, phones across the warehouse lit up with breaking news alerts. Local stations were running exclusive footage, showing Zeke's team allegedly staging attacks, complete with paid actors and fake blood. "What the hell?" Saint grabbed a tablet, watching in disbelief. The doctored videos spread like wildfire. Sheriff Briggs appeared on morning news, standing before a row of American flags. "This evidence confirms our worst fears," Briggs declared, his voice grave. "Ezekiel Monroe and his mercenaries are domestic terrorists, staging violence to destabilize our community. I'm declaring them armed and dangerous." Zeke's fist slammed the table. "They're trying to turn the public against us. We need to counter this now," Isabel said, already typing. "I've got journalists who'll run our side." The night exploded. The first RPG punched through the warehouse wall in a thunderous blast of concrete and steel. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions, bullets hammering the building like deadly rain. "Contact all sides," Saint shouted, grabbing his rifle. "Everyone to positions." Zeke dove for cover as a second explosion tore through the roof. Through the smoke, he saw figures in tactical gear breaching the east entrance, some wearing cartel colors, others in federal tactical uniforms. "They're working together," he growled, returning fire. Doc and Vega were manning the north corner when a grenade bounced through a broken window. Doc shoved Vega aside, but the blast caught them both, sending them sprawling. "Men down!" Diesel called, laying down covering fire. "We need extraction!" Zeke fought his way to the wounded. Doc clutched his bleeding leg while Vega struggled with a shoulder wound. The air filled with tear gas. "Tunnels!" Saint ordered, directing the team toward their escape route. "Move now!" They'd prepared for this, having mapped the old smuggling tunnels beneath the warehouse. Rook and Moose carried the wounded, while others provided covering fire. The team disappeared into the darkness below as more explosions rocked the building. Through his night vision goggles, Zeke saw Fable hesitate at the tunnel entrance, looking back. "Move your ass!" he shouted. They navigated the narrow passages, the sounds of combat growing distant. Behind them, boots thundered through the warehouse above. Then came a sound that made Zeke's blood run cold. Rafa's voice, commanding his men to search everything. "Sir," one of the team called back. "Found something, some kind of old book." Zeke's heart stopped. Mama Ruth's journal. In their rush to evacuate, he'd left it with their intel cache. "No!" He turned back, but Saint and Diesel grabbed him. "Building's lost," Saint hissed. "We move, now!" They emerged from the tunnels into gray morning light, 2 miles from the warehouse. Smoke rose from the building in thick black columns. Police sirens wailed in the distance. The team regrouped in a dry creek bed. Doc worked through the pain to treat Vega's wounds, while others set up a security perimeter. Isabel made urgent calls to sympathetic reporters, trying to counter Briggs's narrative. Zeke stood apart, his chest heaving with rage and grief. The journal had been his last connection to Mama Ruth, filled with her wisdom and the truth about their land. Now, Rafa had it. His fist crashed into the earth once, twice, again. Blood streaked his knuckles. When he spoke, his voice was raw. "They took my past," he growled, dirt and ash coating his face. "Now, I'll take their future." The others watched in silence as their leader wrestled with his fury. They'd lost their base, their evidence, and precious blood. But looking at Zeke's face, they knew this defeat would only feed the fire of what was to come. Doc finished bandaging Vega's shoulder. "We need better cover to treat these wounds properly." "I know a place," Isabel said quietly. "An old mission church. Father Martinez helps people disappear from the cartels?" Saint nodded. "Move out in 5. Stagger our trail. Use the creek bed for cover." As the team gathered their remaining gear, Fable hung back, thumbing his phone nervously. His handler's last message glowed on the screen. "Phase 1 complete. Maintain cover. Do not break contact." The morning sun climbed higher, promising another day of dust and heat. But for now, the survivors of the warehouse raid could only focus on the next step, the next breath, and the weight of everything they'd lost. Rain hammered against the tin roof of the mountain safe house, a steady drumbeat matching Zeke's heartbeat as he sat alone by lamplight. His fingers traced the charred edges of his grandmother's journal, most pages now reduced to ash. The few surviving fragments spoke of her struggles. Fights against land grabs, marches for voting rights, confrontations with men in badges who thought their power was God-given. "Your land is your voice, boy," one passage read. "They'll try to silence both." The door creaked open, bringing a gust of wet wind. Isabel hurried in, her raincoat dripping, clutching a waterproof document case to her chest. Her eyes held an urgent light. "You need to see this," she said, spreading papers across the wooden table. "I went through every record of your grandmother's final years. Found something interesting. A safety deposit box receipt from First Baptist Church." Zeke leaned forward. "Mama Ruth wasn't Baptist." "Exactly." Isabel pulled out more documents. "She also filed an amended deed in 1985, but it's not in any county system. The original should be in that church box." Saint emerged from the shadows where he'd been cleaning weapons. "How long until Rafa's men figure this out?" "They won't," Isabel said. Ruth was clever. She listed the box under her maiden name, and the church has protected refugee documents for generations. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the room. In that brief brightness, Zeke saw determination etched on every face. These people, a lawyer who fought corruption from within, a warrior priest who kept his word like scripture, and 12 other operators scattered through the safe house, had risked everything for his cause. "We move now," he decided, standing, "before the storm gets worse." The church stood dark against the stormy sky, its bell tower a black finger pointing accusingly at the heavens. Father Martinez met them at the side door, his weathered face grave as he led them through candlelit corridors to the vault beneath the sanctuary. "Your grandmother," he said to Zeke, "she knew things would get worse before they got better. Said some truths need to age like wine before they're ready to be tasted." The lockbox contained a leather portfolio, its contents preserved in plastic. Isabel spread them carefully on a stone table while Saint kept watch at the stairs. Zeke's hands trembled as he opened the first envelope. The original deed was there, its anti-dispossession clauses intact. Legal language that made the land impossible to seize without direct Monroe family consent. But beneath it lay something more explosive, a microcassette, and a stack of sworn testimonies from 1988. "Play it," Isabel whispered, setting up a portable recorder. A voice crackled through decades of silence. The previous sheriff, Howard Briggs, Dalton's father. He spoke of protection money, of looking the other way while Mexican heroin moved north, of a woman in Juarez who bore him a second son. "Rafael Leon," the voice confessed. "My boy, same age as Dalton. His mother named him, raised him wild while I raised his brother to wear a badge. God help me, I've created 2 kinds of monsters." Zeke's mind raced. "Briggs and Rafa are brothers." "Half-brothers," Isabel corrected, pulling out a birth certificate. "Both sons of a corrupt sheriff who thought he could control both sides of the border. One legitimate, one hidden. Both rotten to the core." The truth hit Zeke like a physical blow. This wasn't just about his land or even the cartel's power. This was about legacy, about how corruption flowed through bloodlines like poison, about powerful men who thought they could play both sides of justice. "Your grandmother knew," Father Martinez said softly. "She kept these secrets until the right moment, until someone strong enough could use them." More papers emerged. Bank transfers showing Howard Briggs funding Rafa's early criminal enterprise, photos of both brothers at secret meetings, and finally, a letter from Mama Ruth herself. "To whoever reads this," Zeke read aloud, his voice thick with emotion, "know that evil grows best in shadow. Bring it into the light. Let truth be your weapon and justice your shield." The storm raged outside, but in the vault's silence, the team gathered around Zeke. They saw in his face the weight of understanding and the steel of resolution. Doc spoke first. "Those bastards burned your home, thinking they'd erase your history. Instead," Diesel added, "they just revealed their own." Moose laid a heavy hand on Zeke's shoulder. "Command's yours, boss." "How do we play this?" Zeke looked at each face in turn. Warriors who'd followed him into fire, a lawyer who'd dug through decades of lies, a priest who'd guarded truth like sacred flame. This evidence wasn't just leverage, it was ammunition for a reckoning. Saint stepped forward, his expression hard as granite. "We finish this. Tonight." Thunder cracked overhead like artillery fire, and the candles flickered in the vault. In that moment, holding his grandmother's final gift, Zeke felt her presence as clearly as the rain beating against the church stones above. The old barn creaked in the dying storm, candles casting dancing shadows across weathered wood. Zeke stood before a makeshift planning table, really just planks on sawhorses, where satellite photos and blueprints of Rafa's hilltop compound spread like a paper battlefield. The 15 gathered around him, their faces grim in the flickering light. "Tomorrow night's charity gala," Saint said, tapping the villa's main entrance. "Annual fundraiser for border community development. Really just a money-laundering front." Rook, their intelligence specialist, stepped forward. "Guest list includes cartel allies, corrupt officials, and genuine philanthropists who don't know better. Perfect cover for the operation." "And perfect leverage," Isabel added from her laptop station. She'd set up a command center in the corner, multiple screens glowing with data streams. Every dirty handshake in one room. Diesel unfurled architectural plans stolen from the municipal office. 3 access points. Main entrance here, service entrance through the kitchens, and Rafa's private garage underneath. Security will be heavy, but split between watching the guests and protecting the compound. "What about the catering crew?" Zeke asked, studying the kitchen layout. Vega grinned, his scarred face catching candlelight. "Already handled. Got 5 of our local contacts placed as servers. They'll disable the backup generators when we signal." Doc, arms still bandaged from the warehouse attack, pointed to the surrounding hills. "Drone coverage shows blind spots in their perimeter. We can insert through the olive groves here and here." "And the guest list?" Saint looked to Isabel. She nodded, typing rapidly. "Hacked their event management system. Added our covers as minor real estate developers from Monterey. They're expecting new money. Won't look too close." Moose, their demolitions expert, laid out a set of small devices. Modified flashbangs. Less bang, more flash. Won't risk the civilians, but they'll disorient security long enough. "Comms?" Zeke turned to Fable, still unsure about trusting him after recent events. "Encrypted mesh network," Fable replied, not meeting Zeke's eyes. "Each team self-contained. Isabel's command van will have override capability." The plan took shape in the candlelight. Teams of 3 would insert from multiple angles. Isabel would coordinate from a nearby ridge, ready to broadcast everything live. Local police were mapped, their response times calculated. Every contingency had a counter. "Remember," Zeke said, his voice carrying through the barn, "this isn't just about revenge. It's about truth, about showing the world what happens when power goes unchecked." He pulled out the evidence from the church vault, the birth certificates, the confessions, the proof of decades of corruption. "We're not just hitting a cartel boss. We're exposing a system that lets men like Rafa and Briggs think they own justice." Saint nodded slowly. "The truth hits harder than bullets." "Speaking of truth," Isabel interrupted, "I've got media contacts ready. Once we start broadcasting, every major network will pick it up. No one can bury this story." The team broke into specialized groups, checking equipment. Breaching charges were prepared, communications tested, medical kits verified. Each operator moved with the precise economy of long experience. "No masks," Zeke declared, watching them work. "No mercy, but no killing unless we have to. We're not them. We're what stops them." "Rules of engagement?" Doc asked, packing extra trauma supplies. "Subdue and secure," Saint answered. "These aren't soldiers we're facing. They're bullies with guns. Hit hard, hit fast, but keep it clean." Rook brought up thermal imaging of the compound on his tablet. Kitchen staff changes over at 7. First guests arrive at 8. We move at 9 when the party's in full swing. "What about Briggs?" Moose asked. "He'll be there." "Let him come," Zeke said grimly. "Let him see his brother's empire fall. Let him face what his family built." The planning continued as midnight approached. Every detail was refined, every position coordinated. They would enter as ghosts and leave as justice made flesh. In the corner, Isabel prepared her broadcasting equipment. Once this starts, there's no going back. The whole world will see. Good, Zeke replied. Some sins need witnesses. The storm had passed completely now, leaving a clear night sky visible through the barn's gaps. The team began final preparations, checking weapons and adjusting tactical gear. Each operator moved with the focused intensity of men who had done this before, who knew the weight of what was coming. Zeke stepped outside for a moment, breathing in the rain-washed air. The moon had risen, full and accusing, casting silver light across puddles. To the south, he could see lights twinkling on the horizon. Rafa's villa glowing like a challenge against the dark hills. The same hills where his grandmother had once walked, carrying secrets that could burn empires. The same land that had seen generations of struggle against men who confused power with right. Tomorrow, those hills would see justice. Real justice, not bought with blood or buried in bribes, but built on truth and witnesses and the courage to stand unmoved. Behind him, in the barn, he heard the quiet sounds of warriors preparing for battle, the click of magazines being checked, the whisper of combat knives being sharpened, the soft murmur of men speaking last instructions. The light from Rafa's compound seemed to pulse like a heartbeat against the night sky. Soon, that heart would stop. Soon, truth would replace power. Soon. Music drifted through Rafa's hilltop villa, a classical quartet playing in the corner of the grand foyer. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across marble floors where Texas oil money mingled with cartel gold. The annual Border Community Development Fund Gala was in full swing. Zeke adjusted his borrowed waiter's jacket, carrying a silver tray of champagne flutes through the crowd. He'd traded his work boots for polished shoes that clicked against tile. Every few steps, he caught glimpses of familiar faces, politicians who'd approved suspicious permits, judges who'd dismissed clear evidence, reporters who'd buried stories for the right price. Near the main staircase, Sheriff Briggs held court in his dress uniform, medals gleaming. He laughed with donors, playing the part of the humble lawman while his brother's soldiers watched from discreet positions around the room. "Service entrance clear," Saint's voice whispered in Zeke's earpiece. He was in the kitchens with 3 other SEALs, all wearing staff uniforms. "Charges set on the backup generators." "Roof team in position," came Rook's quiet confirmation. "Drone coverage shows no counter-surveillance. They're blind." Isabel's voice crackled from the command van. "Broadcasting equipment online. Every major network is standing by. You say the word, we go live." Zeke moved through the crowd like a ghost, noting security positions. Rafa's men tried to look elegant in ill-fitting suits, but their eyes gave them away. Predator's eyes, always scanning. He counted 16 visible guards, probably twice that number hidden. The classical music shifted to a waltz. On the mezzanine above, Rafa emerged in a white dinner jacket, gold watch catching light. The journal, Mama Ruth's journal, was tucked under his arm like a trophy. He descended the stairs slowly, savoring his moment. "Target confirmed," Zeke subvocalized, moving to Phase 2. He placed his champagne tray on a side table and made his way toward the service corridor. A guard stepped into his path, hand moving to his concealed weapon. "Kitchen needs more ice," Zeke said in Spanish, holding up an empty bucket. The guard hesitated, then nodded him through. In the kitchen's controlled chaos, Saint and the others had already subdued the real staff, zip-tied and secure in the walk-in freezer. Smoke grenades lay hidden in champagne crates, ready for deployment. 60 seconds, Isabel announced. "Feeds are hot." Zeke took position by the main doors. Through the windows, he could see Diesel's team on the perimeter, disguised as valets. Moose's breaching charges were in place on the power junction boxes. 30 seconds, Saint counted down. God's watching, brother. Make it clean. The classical music reached a crescendo. Rafa was speaking now, thanking his distinguished guests for supporting border communities. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so violent. 10 seconds, Isabel said. Cameras ready. 5, 4, 3, 2, execute. The villa plunged into darkness. Before anyone could react, smoke billowed from strategic points around the ballroom. The quartet's music died in confused squeaks. Screams erupted as flashbangs thundered through the space. Zeke moved fast, night vision active. 2 guards went down before they could draw. Precise strikes to throat and temple. Saint's team surged from the kitchen, targeting security positions mapped during recon. Clear! 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 The confirmation calls came rapid-fire through comms as teams secured their sectors. Guests stampeded toward exits, only to find them controlled by disguised SEALs. The smoke created chaos, but the team moved through it like sharks through dark water. Each operator had specific targets. The corrupt judge trying to hide behind a column, the developer reaching for a panic button, the dirty cops fumbling for their weapons. Briggs bellowed commands, his authority crumbling as he realized he'd lost control. He drew his service weapon, but Rook's team was ready. A precision shot from a beanbag round dropped him, gasping. "Primary target moving," Doc called out. "Rafa's heading for the ballroom," Zeke pursued through smoke-filled corridors. 2 cartel soldiers emerged from a side door. He took them down hard, bones cracking against walls. Their expensive suits didn't help them fight any better than street clothes. Another guard swung a submachine gun around. Zeke caught the barrel, twisted, and drove his knee up. The weapon clattered away as its owner folded. No shots fired, just the wet impact of fist on flesh, boot on bone. He could hear Rafa ahead, shouting orders in Spanish and English. The ballroom doors were just ahead. Ornate wooden panels carved with hunting scenes. Fitting. Saint's voice came through his earpiece. "Be advised, hostiles regrouping in the ballroom. Count at least 8 armed." "Acknowledged," Zeke replied, catching his breath. "Is the broadcast live?" "Affirmative," Isabel confirmed. "Whole world's watching. Make it count." Through the doors, he could hear Rafa's voice rising in anger. The journal, his grandmother's journal, would be there. The physical proof of generational theft and corruption, held by the man who'd burned his home. Zeke rolled his shoulders, centering himself. The smoke was starting to clear. Gunfire flickered from somewhere in the villa's east wing. One of the teams dealing with resistance. He moved to the ballroom entrance, hearing Rafa bark orders to his remaining men. This was the moment everything had built toward. All the pain, all the loss, all the long nights planning would end here. The doors loomed before him. Beyond them waited Rafa, the journal, and the kind of justice that couldn't be bought or buried. Zeke took one last breath and moved forward. The ballroom doors burst open. Gunfire flashed in the darkness. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Shards of crystal rained down as the first chandelier crashed to the marble floor, sending guests scrambling. Emergency lights cast everything in a hellish red glow. Smoke curled through the air like angry ghosts. Rafa stood at the center of it all, Mama Ruth's journal clutched in one hand, a curved knife glinting in the other. His white dinner jacket was stained with someone else's blood. 8 of his men formed a protective circle, weapons drawn. "You should have stayed in Texas, farmer," Rafa sneered, tossing the journal aside. It slid across the polished floor, leaving a trail of loose pages. Zeke moved like water, ducking under the first guard's wild swing. His elbow connected with the man's throat. Another rushed him with a knife. Zeke caught his wrist, twisted until bones cracked, and used him as a shield against two more attackers. The fight turned brutal. Bodies slammed into gilt-edged mirrors. Blood sprayed across oil paintings worth millions. Zeke fought with cold precision, each strike calculated from years of training. 3 guards went down in seconds. A 4th got lucky. His blade opened a long gash across Zeke's forearm. Blood soaked his borrowed waiter's jacket. The guard grinned, then gurgled as Zeke's boot crushed his windpipe. "Hold him!" Rafa shouted to his remaining men. "I want this myself!" 2 guards grabbed Zeke's arms. Rafa approached slowly, wiping his knife on a silk handkerchief. His gold chain swung with each step. "You know what your problem is?" Rafa circled like a shark. "You think courage matters, but money matters. Power matters. Your grandmother never learned that lesson either." Zeke's head snapped forward, catching one guard in the face. As the man staggered, Zeke broke free and charged Rafa. They crashed through a table laden with champagne glasses. The knife slashed air inches from Zeke's throat. They grappled on the floor, rolling through broken crystal. Rafa fought dirty, trying to gouge eyes, bite, anything to win. But Zeke had trained for this, had lived this moment in his mind 1,000 times. He caught Rafa's knife hand and slammed it against the marble once, twice, 3 times until the blade clattered away. Rafa headbutted him, splitting Zeke's lip. Blood and sweat mixed as they struggled. "The cameras!" Isabel's voice crackled through Zeke's earpiece. "Get him in position!" With a roar, Zeke lifted Rafa bodily and drove him down onto the marble. The impact knocked the wind from the cartel boss. Before he could recover, Zeke pinned him face up, one knee on his chest. "Now!" Zeke shouted. The ballroom's walls lit up as hidden projectors activated. Every surface became a screen, displaying evidence in high definition: bank transfers, property deeds, sealed court documents. Rafa's empire of corruption laid bare. Saint appeared, dragging a zip-tied fable. The communications specialist looked terrified, his expensive tactical gear now just a prisoner's costume. "Play it," Saint ordered, shoving Fable toward a laptop. With trembling hands, Fable pulled up an audio file. A cold official voice filled the ballroom. "Asset Rafael Leon is to be protected at all costs. Monroe's investigation must be contained. Use whatever means necessary." "Again!" Zeke commanded. Fable replayed it, shoulders slumping in defeat. More SEALs entered, escorting Sheriff Briggs. The lawman's uniform was torn, his face bloody from resisting. His eyes went wide, seeing his half-brother pinned beneath Zeke. "You see that?" Zeke addressed the cameras. "Your protectors, your leaders, all bought and paid for with blood money." The walls showed more evidence: Harlow's shell companies, Briggs's offshore accounts, cartel money flowing through legitimate businesses. Years of corruption exposed in high-resolution detail. "The whole world's watching," Isabel announced. Every major network just picked up the feed. "It's trending globally." Rafa started laughing, a horrible broken sound. "You think this changes anything? There will always be more like me. More money, more power." "Maybe," Zeke replied, "but not here, not anymore." Federal agents swarmed in, followed by Mexican federal police. The arrests began: Rafa, Briggs, the corrupt officials who hadn't managed to flee. Each one led out in handcuffs as cameras rolled. The fight had lasted less than 10 minutes. The aftermath would echo for years. Zeke's knees finally buckled. He collapsed beside one of the fallen chandeliers, exhaustion hitting him like a truck. His arm throbbed where the knife had caught him. Glass crunched under his palms. Saint knelt beside him, that familiar half-smile on his weathered face. "It's done," he said quietly. His hand found Zeke's shoulder, squeezing once. Through the broken windows, dawn was breaking over the hills. The same sun that had watched his ranch burn now rose on justice. Zeke could feel its warmth on his face, mixing with tears he hadn't realized were falling. Mama Ruth's journal lay nearby, its pages scattered across the bloody marble like fallen leaves. But the truth it contained had finally been heard. The ghosts could rest now. 2 months melted winter into spring. Dawn painted the Texas sky in watercolor strokes of pink and gold, touching everything with promise. The sound of hammers and power tools filled the morning air at Monroe Ranch, along with laughter and snippets of Spanish and English mixing freely. Zeke stood in the fresh-tilled earth of his main field, rich soil dark against his boots. All around him, neat rows of green shoots pushed toward the sun, corn, beans, and his grandmother's favorite heirloom tomatoes. The land was healing, coming back stronger after the burn. A pickup truck rumbled up the drive, Isabel's familiar red sedan right behind it. She stepped out carrying a stack of documents, her business suit a stark contrast to the working ranch. The truck bed was loaded with lumber and supplies, more volunteers arriving to help with the rebuilding. "Morning," she called, walking over. "Just got word from the federal courthouse. Clay Harlow's last appeal was denied. Everything's official now." Zeke nodded, brushing dirt from his hands. "How much did they seize?" "Nearly 80 million in assets." Isabel smiled, fierce satisfaction in her eyes. "All of it's being transferred to the Mama Ruth Community Trust. The lithium rights alone will fund scholarships for 3 generations." They walked toward the barn raising, where 24 people worked in coordinated chaos. The new structure was twice the size of the old one, built to house both livestock and community programs. Saint directed operations from the center, calling orders with the same precision he'd once used in combat. "Diesel, secure that crossbeam. Doc, we need the level over here." His voice carried over the construction din. "Looking good, people. Looking real good." Several of the 15 had stayed on, helping rebuild what fire had taken. Others sent supplies, money, or skilled workers through their networks. The brotherhood forged in war now served a different kind of justice. Near the fence line, Mr. Palomo's grandchildren helped younger kids plant a vegetable garden. They used the same heirloom seeds Mama Ruth had saved every season, passing down more than just DNA. The future grew in careful rows, tended by small hands that understood the value of roots. "Report came in on Rafa and Briggs," Isabel said, checking her phone. Federal court handed down maximum sentences, 25 years each, no possibility of parole. Their whole operation's been dismantled. 7 countries cooperating on asset seizure. And Fable? 5 years, reduced for cooperation. His testimony broke open 3 other corruption cases. She paused. "He wrote you a letter. Said he was sorry." Zeke watched a hawk circle overhead, remembering smoke and betrayal. "Keep the letter. Some things don't need words." The construction paused as Isabel gathered everyone in the shade of a half-built wall. She held up the original deed, its edges worn, but its power intact. The crowd grew quiet as she read the crucial passages, Mama Ruth's careful legal language that had protected the land through generations. This property, being held in perpetual trust for the benefit of the community, Isabel's voice carried clear and strong, shall never be sold, seized, or transferred without unanimous consent of the Monroe family and appointed community representatives. Cheers erupted. Someone started singing an old civil rights anthem. Others joined in, the melody carrying across fields that had seen both hatred and hope. Zeke stepped forward, uncomfortable with speeches, but knowing some words needed saying. "Thank you all. The SEALs who came when I called. The neighbors who believed when others doubted. The lawyers who fought. The workers who rebuild." He swallowed hard. "My grandmother used to say land holds memory. These fields remember your courage. Near the main gate, children worked on a large wooden sign. Their small hands carefully painted letters in bright colors. Monroe Ranch, no one's for sale. The simple words carried the weight of everything they'd fought for. The day's work continued. Women from the church brought lunch, tamales, fried chicken, and 3 kinds of pie. The meal became a celebration, people sharing food and stories in the spring sunshine. Old divisions seemed smaller now, burned away like chaff. Even the sheriff's department had new leadership. Deputies who'd once looked away now patrolled regularly, exchanging waves with ranch workers. Change came slowly, but it came. As sunset painted the sky, Zeke and Saint leaned against the new fence, watching the day's helpers head home. The rebuilt barn stood solid against the darkening sky, already housing new livestock. Tomorrow would bring more work, more healing, more growth. They thought fire would break me, Zeke said quietly, running a hand along the fresh-cut lumber. Turns out, it forged me. Saint nodded, understanding in his weathered face. They stood in comfortable silence as evening settled over the ranch. Workers' headlights traced paths home through the gathering dusk. The land stretched wide around them, fields replanted, fences mended, scars turning slowly into strength. The ranch spread out below them, reborn from its ashes. New buildings rose where old ones had burned. Fresh paint marked new beginnings. Justice had been served, not through violence, but through truth and community and stubborn hope. In the distance, lights began appearing in neighboring houses. The ranch was no longer just one family's stand against corruption. It had become something larger, a symbol, a sanctuary, a promise kept. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.